with young teachers, right, there's this idealism. There's this, and I said to them too, like, please don't lose that. Please don't lose that. Like, I know, like, things happen and maybe that changes. But there's, I look at someone like you, Dave, you're still beautifully idealistic. No,
I'll take that. Thank you, bro. Welcome to Hallway Conversations. We're a trio of educators who have plenty of questions about teaching and learning and school culture, and we believe in the value of reflection and collaboration as we seek to keep growing as teachers. This podcast is our place for thinking out loud together about issues in education and why they might matter to Christian educators. Welcome to the conversation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 117th episode of the Hallway Conversations podcast. My name is Matt Beamers.
I'm Abby DeCrow.
And I'm Dave Mulder.
Our podcast is brought to you by our friends at the Center for the Advancement of Christian Education. We're always looking for topics of conversation and feedback, so please email us at hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. That's hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. Your feedback and your ideas are important to us. Dave and Abby, the day we're recording this is the last day of exams. Mm-hmm. I notice there's already a steady stream of cars leaving campus, and prayers for those who are traveling. But as we think about heading into Christmas break, maybe two questions for a short discussion today. What's one gift you received from your students this semester? And by that, I don't mean what present did you get. Remember those days?
Actually, I did get a present. One of my catchphrases in class, if things are going really well or really badly, I say, baby ducks. Like it's just a non-swear. Every teacher needs a non-swear, right? Well, the last day of class, a student actually came, not an ed major, it's one of these core classes I teach. She brought me a little rubber ducky. And she was like, baby ducks. I was like, baby ducks. You get it. That was great. It was a great moment.
Anyway, so some of us got it. But what present or what did your students gift you with? Or how did they bless you even? And question two is, as you think about education in 2025, what gift would you put under the tree for schools or school systems or teachers or students? So what gift did you receive and what gift would you give? So maybe let's start with the receive. Abby, something comes if you think about your students, like what did they gift you with?
So I think any teacher who is not asking their students to reflect on their own learning is missing out on an incredible gift. So that's what I'm going to say. I'm listening to my students talk about their progress. Is a gift that I intentionally design it this way. For most of my summative assessments are reflect on your learning, giving specific examples from the semester.
I was going to say, and just for people maybe who are intrigued by that, like Abby, how, do you do that, like you give them a piece of paper?
I actually do it in a lot of ways. So in one of my classes that I teach, they have a take-home final, and I list the course goals, and I say reflect on your most important takeaways for each of the goals.
Wow.
No, and this is this college class, right? So it ends up being about 4 or 5 pages long, about a page per goal. And I said, I don't want you to recap everything. I know what we learned.
Don't summarize it.
Don't summarize it. Right. But pull from course activities and readings and things that we did and tell me what your most important takeaway is from the course and what you're going to do with it.
Sure.
Right?
Awesome.
And so they also had, that same class did a semester-long inquiry project, like an action research project in their placements.
They were unbelievable.
So
good. That, too, they did a poster presentation on that project. So they had to summarize their learning from this semester-long project. And we did we split it into 2 groups. Half the class puts their little slides on a trifold, and the other half of the class walks around and listens to everybody. They have a little elevator pitch, and they kind of talk about their projects and what they did in their classrooms and what they learned, and then they switch, and the other half of the class walks around and learns, and then they have to reflect on that project at the end of my exam block.
Can I put you on the spot? Because I was in there.
Yeah.
But I'm drawing a blank. What were some of the topics that because I found that actually pretty fascinating as I walked around.
So things like the impact of technology on motivation in students. And so they observed that for a whole semester. using field notes and interviewing students and in their practicum. That's an example. Another one I can think of is they would try specific strategies. So like implementing exit slips and the effect that had on retention and engagement. Another one did bell ringers, right? Like what effect does that have on attention and engagement? One of my students implemented it started because he noticed that on some days his 5th grade students were a lot calmer than others, and he figured out that it was after they had PE.
That they were calmer?
Calmer.
Interesting.
Like much more attentive. So started on the days they didn't have PE, implementing some like brief exercise, like some movement in the class and looking at what that had.
That's amazing.
To do. So like they would notice issues. That was the whole point of the project. Notice an issue, design something to kind of reflect on your own teaching or reflect on a strategy, and then tell us what you learned using data. Another one of my PE majors, they started the class in his practicum jumping rope every day. And so he would count students' jump ropes, see if he could give them positive reinforcement, and see how much their counts increased after that. So like the impact of positive comments or reinforcement on effort and productivity.
And so these students are collecting data, they're actually reflecting on this, and then they report it out. Like they feel some sense of efficacy in the process too.
A ton of choice. A ton of, So, and then one of my other classes, same thing. I gave them the course goals and I said, that's a smaller class. They came in my office in 2 groups and I said, okay, have a conversation with each other about your learning. Around each of these 4 goals. And you're not reading anything. You're talking to each other, and then you're building off of the conversation about your learning over the semester towards these goals.
It makes me think that maybe keeping students in at recess isn't such a good idea. If I can ask one more question, because these were end of semester.
Correct.
Do you do some self-reflection just on small, on a daily assignment or just on smaller things? What does that look like? Again, I'm putting you on the spot.
Right. So I do admit slips a lot where they're having to respond to something they read or respond or, I do different protocols. So like the 3 A's, what's something you admire or aspire to? What's something that you want to ask a question about? The third one's I'm blanking right now.
Argument.
Yes. What do you want to argue with? Yep. So again, that's requiring them to think about something and process it and reflect on it, not just answer a factual question about the reading. So a lot of things like that are just built into my class along the way.
So was it a gift for you in terms of just affirming the work of the semester?
Yes, and it helps me hear, especially in my small group conversation, for example, what pieces of the course were most helpful to their learning, which is helpful for me from a design perspective. And don't quit doing this, or this could be tweaked, so it's helpful that way. And also, I think it's helpful for them just to articulate it. And I tell them that before, the take home. This is for you to articulate what are the most important pieces of this class that you can take away. And I said that is a gift for you to be able to sift through all of it and say, what are the things I really want to hang on to?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for that. How about you, Dave? If you think about one gift, now we know you got a baby duck. How about in a larger sense of sort of hey, well, what did they gift you with, or what do you kind of take away from this semester?
I think that's such a good question that you're raising. So we're at the part of the semester where I'm meeting with a lot of my advisees. We're at the end here, and for folks who are being admitted to the program, we have kind of an interview process that's part of that, or for approval for student teaching. And so I get to hang out with my upperclassmen who I've gotten to know really well over 3.5 years. The gift of this is, I don't know, I had, 8 of these kinds of meetings for approvals and stuff. And we call it an interview, but it's more just a conversation about, do you still want to be a teacher? And tell me your story. And what does teaching Christianly actually look like to you right now? And tell us a story about, the teaching that you've been doing lately in your fieldwork. And I'm just so impressed by our students' thoughtfulness. So maybe it's similar to what you were saying, Abby, that reflectiveness that they have, but just their honest self-assessment about like their own story. Like, this is why I want to be a teacher. I had this amazing high school history teacher, and it made me want to be a history teacher too. And here, let me tell you what I'm doing now as a result of that. I had an amazing elementary teacher at 4th grade, and she made me feel so seen and so special, and I'm going to be that person. Somebody else, like, right? You get to hear those kinds of stories. But then for them to go through like all these dispositions that we're trying to shape and develop in our students, and for them to tell stories from their fieldwork too, like, hey, so flexibility is a thing for teachers, and here's how I had to practice flexibility this semester. And oh, professionalism is a thing for teachers. Here's the ways that I'm developing as a professional educator. And to just hear their stories firsthand, it just reminds me the gift that we have as educators in general. I think for us, especially in higher ed, because we're thinking about having people join us in this profession. But for every educator, like, don't miss the fact that you get to have an impact on students' lives in very real and tangible ways. And then to just make sure you hear their stories about that, it's so compelling.
It is.
Yeah, like we're impacting them no matter what.
Oh,
like, right? Like,
for good or for ill.
Education is formation,
That's right?
Yeah, and so that's what I just keep thinking about is like, so if you know that's happening, how do you want it to, in what way do you want to form?
That's right.
Form and shape them. It's not a matter of if it's happening. It's like, how is it happening? So. It is happening. No, totally. And I just think about that with my own students. Like, I think the gift they gave me is it reminded me how we are formed and shaped by our students. Like, I think we hope for that for them.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Through God's grace and the work of the Holy Spirit, that happens. But I was just really struck by my class this semester, like what they did to me, for me, right? Like, in terms of watching them want to include and belong and being hospitable, or just students who didn't know each other. Hey, come sit with us. Like, hey, like, don't sit by yourself. Like, this idea of we want you to be part of the larger group. You know, we had a chance to listen to Lynn Swanner from Cardis USA speak last week, and the new Cardis study has come out, and there's a lot of great things happening in Christian faith-based schools, but one of the areas that there's actually room for significant growth is around students' sense of belonging in schools.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it's something we need to think about as Christian schools. I think one of the reasons we need to look at it is because I think for a lot of us, we see it as our strength, whereas the data actually bears it out differently. And I think the gift that I saw is like the possibility of it, what it looks like when students take belonging seriously, wanting to belong, but also making sure others feel like they belong, and making me feel like I belong. And so I just think it's one of the things to think about is how important it is. I mean, Dave, you talked about this a bit, to know and be known by others. I think and I was thinking about what you were talking to, Dave, about kind of there's, with young teachers, right, there's this idealism, there's this, and I said to them too, like, please don't lose that. Please don't lose that. Like, I know, like, things happen and maybe that changes, but there's, I look at someone like you, Dave, you're still beautifully idealistic. No,
I'll take that. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. Like you assume good intent, like you're super hopeful, like, and it doesn't mean you're not realistic.
Right. I'm not naive after all.
You're not naive, but you never give in to cynicism.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I think, and I said that to these young teachers too, as they go into these schools, like, find the Dave Mulders on staff, right? No, but like that guard against that are realistic, but also optimistic. Like, you don't have to choose between those, right? And so I just think, like, surround yourself and teachers, if you're the cynical one on staff, stop it. Like, please stop it. Like, and there's a difference between realism and cynicism. And so I said, even for these young teachers, like, find the people who are going to keep allow you to maintain your hope, I guess.
That's great.
Yeah.
Question number 2, if you think about education in the coming year, and again, now we can think of whether it's practices in a classroom, whether it's systems, whether it's education, just large education, what gift would you put under the tree? Dave, can I come back to you, a thought?
Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of reading and thinking and developmental work in ed tech, for a long time now. But AI is the big thing on my radar right now, and I think this is going to sound like a weird gift to give. I would love to give schools the gift of being brave when it comes to something like AI, because this is the world that our students are now living in, and we need to be brave enough to admit that. And not stick our heads in the sand and pretend this doesn't exist, or this is too scary, or this is too overwhelming, or I don't know enough about this, I don't know what to do about this. Yep, those are all true things. It is scary. It is a brave new world, and we don't know enough about it yet. Yeah. But let's then also be brave enough to say, I can learn about this. And yeah, I think this is just a realistic but optimistic. Thank you for giving me that language too.
Yeah.
The hope that I have is this reminds me so much. I know I said this a couple weeks ago on the podcast when we talked about AI, but it reminds me so much of the conversations we were having in the early 2000s about this World Wide Web thing and how are we going to deal with this? And it's like, we adapt. That's how we're going to deal with it. And our school system's going to have to adapt in the world of AI? Yes. Yeah. We are going to have to adapt. So the gift that I hope to give is that we can be brave when it comes to new things.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well said.
That's good.
Abigail, how about you?
Yeah, I think I've been reminded just in a variety of ways in the last couple of weeks of the power of collaboration and not being alone in schools. And I think that's the gift I would give, right? Time to learn from and with each other.
Amen.
Because I think teaching can be so isolating. Leading a school can be isolating. And I think no one wins in that situation.
No, that's right.
And so it's hard. From a practical standpoint, it is hard to carve out time and resources for teachers to collaborate meaningfully, for admin to do the same. But I think it is a necessary ingredient for good teaching and learning.
Invest in collaboration.
Collaboration, yep.
It's interesting as you say that, Abby, because I'm thinking about whether it's a school leaders or teachers, a job that you are constantly surrounded by people that can be so lonely.
Well, because you're in your own world, right? In some ways. And the best PD I ever had, K-12, was a structure made for bringing teachers from different disciplines around a table, right? In a various, it was a protocol. And learning from each other in that way, right? Not an outside speaker, not a one-time one and done, but systematically sharing what we're doing and asking for ways to make it better. In a structure that works for your school, whether that's a grade band, whether that's across content areas, or I just think the best PD resources in your building are your teachers.
And making space for conversation, right? Like I've had that. I've probably said this on the podcast. What we're doing here is what I wished I'd had in when I taught in K-12, right? The opportunity to carve out time every 2 weeks to sit down with a couple trusted colleagues. Let's talk about stuff. And that's a commitment of time. It's a commitment of resources to be able to find the time and to make the space to actually do that. But boy, what a benefit that would be for schools.
And I think the payout, right, is increased senses of belonging and authenticity like we were talking about, but also just better instruction. And so how can you afford not to do it?
And just I think a sense too as you're talking, Abby, like we're in this together.
Yes.
Like we're in this together.
Solidarity.
Right? I think about just the three of us, like you've all become these people and I'm having one of those days to shut the door. Just like whether it's vent, but it's also, hey, like I need an idea, or how do I do this, right? Like I don't, I think about what's the difference between year 5 for me and year 1. I'm not lonely because I found my people, right? And I know that's true of the rest of our ed department too, but it's like, right? So how do we help our faculty find their people and give them time to find.
That's good.
And directed collaboration, right? Like in a structure that promotes authentic but purposeful conversations.
Totally. And then
and build a system where people are brave enough to be vulnerable and to learn and to share, right? Because it doesn't work if people aren't willing to engage in it either. So
accountability and support, right? Structures and time or whatever resources are needed to make it happen. Yeah, I think mine's a bit related to that, Abby. I'm thinking more about, if I think about when I was a principal, I was really good at Jeans days. I was really good at food in the staff room. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe there's no teachers.
They were like, "What are you talking about,
Christine
Beavers?"
Smith, if you're listening to this, you can give me feedback on that. But like I could be good at the easy, low hanging fruit, the fun stuff, right?
Right.
But I don't think I ever asked teachers, like, what do you actually need for me to do to care for you? Like this idea, I was really good at the self-care. Like, we got to talk about self-care. You need to take care of I was good at that. But I don't think I ever actually went beyond, like, putting anything systematically in place that allowed for that, whether it was around time, whether it was just, it was just playful stuff that doesn't actually alleviate, like Jeans Day is great. No one feels less overwhelmed because of Jeans Days.
Right.
Like, they don't, like, maybe somebody does. I'm sure somebody does, but... So I think it's this idea of, like, I guess first my gift would be for school leaders to think, like, how are we actually going to do this? And how are we actually going to know if we're succeeding or not? Like, even collecting feedback. Feedback on that. And maybe related to that, too, I'm thinking of students, like, just, again, as schools, to ask ourselves, are we giving students adequate resources to deal with some of the mental health issues that exist? And whether you can see those issues as teachers or school leaders, like, students have them. They all, like, everybody needs counseling, I always think. We all do. We're all in need of it. And I just think we need to get to a place of, like, are we putting the right people in the right place to help these students? Because there's a lot of hurting students who do feel alone, and they're not feeling less alone at schools, and not because we're ignoring them. It just, I think we just need to, again, ask students, like, what support do you need for healness and for wellness and healing to take place? So friends, we know that your time is valuable, and we want to thank you for joining us today for another hallway conversation. Whether it's this day, this week, or this month, we hope the Lord gives you what you stand in need of, and we'd like to send you from here with this blessing. So to our listeners, as you enter Christmas, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace, and give you peace, and give you peace. Merry Christmas, everyone. Thanks for listening. Have a good break.
This podcast was literally dreamed up during one of our actual hallway conversations. Our music is by Ethan Mulder. Hallway Conversations is created and produced by Matt Beamers, Abby DeGroat, and Dave Mulder. Hey, we have a favor to ask of you. Would you be willing to rate this podcast or write a review in your podcast app? Or if you found this conversation interesting or helpful, would you consider sharing it on your social media? Those things really do help podcasters out, and we would be so, so grateful. Thanks for listening, friends.
Is this on, Dave? Check.
Yes, you're good.
Check.
Good.
I'm going to turn the table just a little bit because we keep squeaking, and it's my fault here, I think. I'm going to take a screwdriver to this thing.
I know.
I think we're okay. All right. Let's try to keep our elbows off again. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Oh, man. Oh,
Jingle jangle.